Aloha champions, and welcome back to our Tuesday science video for this week. You've already done a social studies video which felt a little bit like science, talking about the biology of mountain animals, but we're in science now, and this should feel more like a science video because we're continuing our discussion about energy and renewable and non-renewable resources for energy and how we can power our world around us. We've talked about coal, oil, nuclear, and all those other non-renewable resources. We've talked about some renewable resources, solar, wind, water, and we're going to talk about another renewable resource called geothermal energy today. Something that we've known about probably the longest of all the energies, but we're just now fully utilizing to the best of our ability natural hot springs and so forth to power our world. Okay, so without further ado, let's get into Chapter 8 of Unit 5, Geothermal Energy. The first thing that my eye gets drawn to every time I'm reading one of these informational texts, whether it's CKSci, science, or social studies, is what is the big question? What do I want to think about as I'm reading this? So our big question for today is, what is geothermal energy and how do people use it? And a vocabulary term that we'll be hearing throughout this is geothermal energy. Is energy produced by heat that is transferred from Earth's interior, in our mantle and core where we have all that bubbling, gurgling magma. How do we use the heat of our Earth to power things in our lives? So, a person purchases land to build a cabin, but there are no utility poles or pipelines nearby to carry electricity, natural gas, or water to this cabin. Instead, the builder uses solar panels to produce electricity from solar energy. For heating, they use a geothermal heat pump. The pump moves liquid through pipes that run deep into the ground and back into the home. So going down where underneath the crust or into the crust where it's getting warmer and warmer, and piping that back up to keep the heat circulating. Heat from underground, which is always about 50 degrees Fahrenheit, warms the liquid. The liquid is then pumped into a unit that collects heat from the liquid. The unit distributes water, which is now much warmer than the air outside, throughout the house. This is only one of the ways of using geothermal energy, or the thermal energy that is underground. There are many costs and benefits to using geothermal energy. Well, it says that it's 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Seems a little bit cooler than here in the valley, but if we're those kind of mountain animals living up in the mountains, maybe this could be real beneficial. I know up in Flagstaff they use a lot of geothermal energy, but let's learn about some other ways people use geothermal energy. So, requirement for using geothermal energy. Another kind of geothermal energy is available when very hot parts of Earth's mantle are close to the crust. This thermal energy produces hot springs and geysers like Old Faithful in Yellowstone National Park. Such heat from the mantle can only be reached in certain locations, but it can have many benefits. This kind of geothermal energy can be harnessed to heat homes, businesses, and other structures. Geothermal heat is used to create steam. The steam or hot water is passed through pipes that heat water in a boiler. This water can pass through pipes in a home and release heat as steam. It can also be used to cook or bathe in. However, you cannot just go out and dig a hole in the ground and find a source of steam or hot water. It just doesn't happen everywhere. Most of these sources of steam or hot water are in areas where Earth's crust is active, such as our volcanic areas, Hawaii, Iceland maybe, and are in areas where Earth's crust, well is drilled through the first layer of rock into the reservoir, where steam or hot water can be found. After the geothermal power plant converts the thermal energy into electricity, the cooled water is pumped back into the reservoir through a different well. This recycles the water. Okay, so if here we have our reservoir, it pumps up the hot water through the production well into the geothermal factory, and that creates steam. The steam spins our turbines. The turbines makes energy. And then once all that's done, we just pump all that cold water back down into the ground where it gets heated up back again, where it is close to the magma from the mantle. And once it's heated up, it goes back through the whole cycle. So we can reuse that over and over again. May not be the most beneficial for here in Arizona because we don't have a lot of volcanic activity, but for other parts of the world, this is a key resource to keep them energized. Types of geothermal energy use. Another type of geothermal energy can be extracted from old oil fields. Oil fields that no longer have petroleum but are full of wastewater can be used for geothermal energy. The fluid is not clean or hot enough to directly drive a turbine, those spinning things that generate all the electricity regardless of what type of energy you're using. We don't want to put the dirty water through that. However, it is passed into an apparatus called a heat exchanger. This transfers the heat from the liquid to another fluid that boils at a lower temperature than water. Therefore, it turns into gas without needing to be as hot and becomes vapor to drive those spinning turbines. So heat exchange, you heat up something that boils quicker than water, requires less heating, but still generates gas that spins those turbines that power electricity. Okay, so if their production well, the old used up oil well, they took all the oil that they could, they've got water that cycles through, it heats up, transfers its energy to liquid that has a boiling point warmer or colder than water, spins the turbine, turbine powers the generator, generator powers the electricity, and the dirty water goes back in. We try to recycle as much as we can with geothermal energy. The costs of geothermal energy, not just how much money, which could be expensive, but are there any downsides to this newer type of renewable energy? Well, geothermal energy is a clean way of meeting our energy needs. However, it cannot be done on a large scale without a big investment of money. Okay, so yes, it does take a lot of money, but it is clean, cleaner than most. A safe site where geothermal fluid can be trapped must also be found. Countries such as Iceland and the Philippines are two countries that meet a lot of their energy needs using geothermal energy, but both have access to geothermal reservoirs thanks to their locations. They're in very volcanic areas with a lot of current flowing magma that heats things up. But here in the United States, we have far fewer volcanic areas. But it still uses geothermal energy to generate electricity in some places. Some places use geothermal, not every place in the United States. Drilling the wells for a geothermal power plant can cause natural gas to escape. Unburned methane is a powerful greenhouse gas. Any opening in Earth's crust that allows trapped methane to escape could cancel the positive effects of operating a geothermal power plant. So if you're not careful with where you're drilling and let that natural gas out, then maybe you're not as clean as you might pretend to be. Okay? So we've looked at a lot of energy ways in which we power up our communities around the world. And here we have this nice little chart to say how much of Earth's energy comes from which resource. 32% of all Earth's energy is used in natural gas, whether that's heating up steam in a power plant, or whether it's to pump to houses to use for cooking. We use coal for 30% of everything. Coal's not a very renewable resource, requires a lot of mining, but it does burn really good and get those steam to power those turbines. Nuclear energy is about 20% of the world's energy, where petroleum is only 1%. And yet we use that for all those cars that drive on the road. Interesting thought. Our renewable energies only make up 17% of all of our energy use. Hydro, or water, is 7.5%. Wind is 6.3%. Biomass is 1.6%, and that is taking usually biodiesel, which is expired from fast food places, or the methane gas from cows and so forth, and using that to power energy of some sort. Solar is 1.3%, and geothermal is the smallest use of percentage at only 0.4%. Okay, so a lot to consider when it comes to energy. Geothermal may not be perfect for Arizona, but if we can utilize it in key places, it may be very helpful. So hopefully you learned something new about this type of renewable and cleaner resource. Answer the 5 to 10 questions in the Google Classroom. Stay awesome, and I will talk to you real soon.